These are 5 powerful moves that you should be doing every day, or at the bare minimum, scheduling throughout the week for your training, if you want to move like a pro and be pain-free. The first one is squat jump, and using the squat actually as a resting position. I've talked about the resting squat in other videos, and it's a position that oftentimes needs to be rehabbed in a lot of people because of tight hips, painful knees, painful ankles, and even tight hamstrings. Tight hamstrings can oftentimes preclude a person from getting down to that low level, because as they come down here, they're getting a stretch already through those hamstrings, which creates a situation where you're actually fighting against your own body in order to do these moves. I remember whenever I used to do weightlifting, it starts to undermine a lot of athletic potential, and there's a lot of other ways to build a body that's adaptable and powerful for all kinds of different situations without having to rely on a gym and sets and reps ad infinitum. And you might be in that situation where you've had issues with the squat, coming down to that low squat position and then having lower back problems. The low squat, a resting squat without weight, and even with weight, I would use weight up to 225 pounds and just hold it down in the low squat position as a stretch for the hips and to help the core with stabilization. However, like I mentioned, there's not really a necessity for that, and there's other ways to build a lot of power that we're going to get into today, but the squat is one of those. And like I said, we want to start in a resting squat position. This is your rest position. We'll oftentimes do jump squats all the way around the entire gym and using this as a rest. And whenever you start to look at the expanse that's required in that particular conditioning situation, there is a lot of ground to cover. And so the resting squat becomes, rather than an exercise, a position that you're catching your breath at the same time you're simultaneously making your body adapt to the flexibility requirements, and it will adapt. So when we do a jump squat, when we have this beginning position, we want to have the heels down. The toes going out a little bit is okay. We're using the arms to lift up as we jump. Obviously, if you don't want to use your arms and just use the legs, you can fold the arms. You can even hold the weight like this. Whenever we jump up, swinging the arms and bringing the legs together and pointing the feet straight down. This forces you to really start to take note of your body in space as it moves with detail. So many times people get into training different moves and then they don't think about those details, and that's where some of those injuries and chronic injuries are hiding. So we want to think about the entire body, even on a basic like this. Nice slow squat using the arms, even the fingers. I'm thinking about the fingers being pointed here, and I'm driving up through, bringing those feet together at the top and then coming and landing down at the bottom. Now, when people think about building a powerful physique, oftentimes they think about those big lifts. What are they? The deadlift, the squat, and the bench press. I've done all of those. And like I said, there are other ways to signal to the body these tremendous amounts of forces that are actually happening a lot faster, that builds to power. And these moves that I'm sharing with you today are dynamic moves, which creates that sense of force that your body has to respond to. So whenever we're jumping up, boom, and landing back down, it's more than just your body weight that's feeling the impact there. There could be 2 Gs or 3 Gs, especially whenever we go into higher surfaces, like over here on these blocks. So even just this small one here, and I drop down and then back up. Or whenever I go to higher blocks. And this is training that we use for all ages, all levels, all backgrounds. We're training people are coming to us, they're CEOs, they're pilots, they're surgeons, physical therapists, firefighters, pro athletes. A lot of these people have formerly been very athletic, maybe involved in training before. Sometimes people are just starting from scratch. And we're using this training to build up to really quite awesome levels of strength, skill, and sustainability. So whenever we come down and then jumping off of the ground, a lot of forces involved. Again, like 2 or 3 Gs. Whenever you start adding flips onto that, then you're taking it up a whole different level. And this all comes from just one element of the Powerbatics training, as we call it, which is like body weight strength, really, is the umbrella term. But even doing a backflip, coming down low, maybe in a sport, maybe in a daily activity, you've got to catch your balance on the ground and have the hip mobility and the knees ready to be responsive and handle those forces, which is why we train them. And so again, a lot of this is coming from that free run element of Powerbatics. A lot of leg conditioning. And whenever you put those squat jumps to use in a good way, at least doing them weekly, if not daily, because a lot of the landings and stuff, they're happening all of the time, but it's going to take you to much higher levels. So let's come over here and let's look at the next one. This is move number 2. And this is going to be pushing strength. But again, we're looking at pushing and all of these moves with a unique theme today. And that theme again is dynamics. It is adding motion, powerful motion, to the movements. And if you implement these and movements related to these, then you got to be able to move like a pro and be pain-free, because your body has adapted to those forces. So we have our bridge. And then instead of just holding the bridge, we're jumping, just like the jump squats. And I'm doing the same thing with my feet. I'm extending my legs and I'm pointing my feet in kind of a parallel direction to the floor. And I'm allowing my shoulders to feel the force from that jump. And what is happening there is it's starting to stretch all the pectoral muscles, the deltoids, even the bicep tendons, those get stretched. And then your whole posterior chain is acting as a prime mover in that situation, as well as the quads for the jump. But that arch position, every muscle on the posterior side of your body is engaged with helping to support yourself in that position and through that movement. So what if you can't get up into a bridge? How are you supposed to be able to do those and make those part of your daily or at minimum weekly training? Well, there's a couple of different pieces. I like to call them scaffold moves, those unique tweaks that we use for different people. And then they're also called bridge moves, because you're bridging to the next progression, because you never want to stay at the same level all the time. That is a recipe for chronic injuries, overuse injuries. People don't even realize it, but you're getting into this position where you have to understand, let's say that you go to a mainstream gym and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now you may mix up the workouts and whatnot, or you may get different prescribed training plans from a trainer or something. But what you're inadvertently doing is become a specialist. You're literally becoming a specialist at working out according to a mainstream method. Machines or your weights or your yoga or whatever the classes are doing. And you're staying at that level, and a lot of those exercises cross over, and you're basically doing the same thing for years and years and years. and you're becoming a specialist in that area, and specialists become the ones that are injured because of the overuse. A generalist at most of the things they do, they're able to adapt, they're able to become strong in those different related areas. And sure, there might be certain areas that they excel at very well, but they're still doing everything else, and they're applying those different moves to all those different spheres. And so their body is constantly adapting, constantly growing stronger. There's a saying that the rich get richer. It's the same with the strength. The strong get stronger. And there's even relatability between those two aspects of life. So if we come back over here to a raised surface, we use this all the time, a raised surface. Now people often ask, what if I don't have all of the equipment? There's a bunch of things that I hear all the time in the comments, and that reminds me, leave your wins and victories in the comments. Tell me what you're excelling at, right, Adam?
Right. We gotta hear from you guys.
So anything will do for training. There are people in way worse situations than you, yes, you, that are doing phenomenal strength and skill and have wonderful sustainability. So don't get caught up in those things. And don't get caught up in, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough this or that. That all comes from a mindset of lack, and you want to get rid of that as soon as possible by taking action. So here we're stretching, and we're just getting the hands planted on the ground, and we're trying to get those palms flat, and then we're pressing, and then we eventually want to have the back off of that object. And that becomes a very nice stretch for the upper thoracic section of the spine and the shoulders. Even easier than that we use all the time is literally just this. Body straight and letting the arms hang. And so that is actually a really good place to add your weights. Weighted stretching is an invaluable tool for helping to open up your body. Now that's a little bit more advanced, but imagine in that position there and you're holding an object over your head and it's helping you to go lower into that stretch. And we're doing things like 1, 3, 5 minute holds sometimes even longer. Okay, the next one, as we walk over this way, the third move. Oh, by the way, the bridge comes directly from the handstand element of Powerbatics. And there's a variety of different handstand positions. And you can look at a lot of those on the channel. And we have a number of students, like I said, pilots, CEOs, engineers, architects, physical therapists, software developers, crypto entrepreneurs, all sorts of folks that are coming into training, and a lot of them are developing extremely high levels of strength and skill and body mastery. And handstand is one of those elements that is very, very good for your entire body. And I could mention people like Alex, people like Venny, people like Isaac, that are all developing all those different handstand positions. And then there's the third move, which is from Ninja Strength, and this is going to be swinging. So every day, or at least weekly, you should be doing something where you're swinging, some kind of move that is requiring you to have your body hanging with grip strength and allowing the force, and we'll talk about those forces in a second, but allowing those forces to transfer through your shoulder joint, all that connective tissue. It's acting as traction to create more flexibility. And those swings like the squats, like the bridge jumps, are building or generating 2 to 3 times body weight of force on those joints. So all of the swings, they're putting force on your body in fractions of a second that's demanding your body to adapt to increase the amount that you can handle on the connective tissue, on the joints, your muscles, everything involved. So it could be 2-hand swings, it could be 1-hand swings, but swinging should be part of your normal training regimen. It shouldn't be out of the ordinary to swing. Now the fourth move that you should be doing daily to build a powerful body so you can move like a pro and be pain-free. I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about the bridge jumps and that coming from the handstand element of Powerbatics. And there's actually 6 handstands in that section of training. And so handstands become an invaluable part of the training that you should be doing all the time. And a handstand isn't necessarily just a vertical handstand like that, but there's all sorts of other handstands that you should be working on. They could be bent arm handstands. They could be hands raised overhead, where you invert that, it turns into the vertical handstand. But it can also be one that I talk about a lot, which is the V stand. That is technically a handstand. So handstand should be something that you are integrating into your training all the time. It should be your staple for pushing strength. So I mentioned 3 big weightlifting exercises that people use to try to generate a powerful body. And some of the most advanced, most powerful athletes in the world don't even use a deadlift, a bench press, or a squat. In fact, there's a famous Olympic weightlifter who talks about very specifically not doing the bench press because it literally tightens up the shoulders. And so he does a number of other things, obviously with weights, because he's an Olympic weightlifter. But the bench press is one that's avoided. So of those big 3, an elite athlete at the most advanced level that you can find, saying that bench press should be something, or at least for him, something that should be avoided. Me too. I have gotten rid of the bench press a long time ago, and it was like every single time I would go through a phase of building up the bench press, there would be some sort of issue with the rotator cuff. You've probably been there. Out of the thousands upon thousands of applications that we have for training, we hear it all the time. The squat, the deadlift, and the bench press causing all sorts of problems. And please, I've heard it all too. Oh, it's about the form. You're not doing it right. All these other things. No, even in perfect form situations, things happen within a fraction of an inch that can cause major issues. And so there are other ways. Now, if you like to do it, by all means, go ahead. But I have seen those specifically be a direct contributor to negative performance in a number of different areas. It's tightening up. It is creating a dependence upon those exercises to try to build power whenever the other things that we're discussing, like in this video, are going to build power in ways that I can't even describe, but that I see every day in terms of the high levels of skill. So getting back to the handstand. The handstand should be one that you're using to build that upper body strength and power. And so what does that power eventually look like whenever you start combining the legs and the upper body in those ranges of motion with quick forces? It could even start to look like this, where you're passing through it within that back handspring, a handstand position, and then you are quickly pushing with high velocity at multiple times body weight off your wrists. There have been studies done with force plates on a floor with a tumbler, doing some of these moves like a round off back flip or a round off back handspring back flip. And when the hands or the feet impact the ground, we're generating multiple times body weight of force. Something that can't be trained in mainstream methods, but that I'm giving you the cheat codes for today. So whenever you're hitting the feet at the end of a back handspring, for example, that can generate, they've measured up to 14 times body weight. The hands, close, but not that high. And so again, hand balancing will cover so much ground for you and help you develop in ways that you really didn't realize were possible. And then for the final move for today, the fifth move that you should be doing every day, are your splits. And this should be something that is a staple before, during, and after training. The splits will carry over to all of your hand balancing. So for example, it is much easier to hold a handstand with straddled legs versus straight up, because you have more weight at the top, which is going to put more force on your wrist at the bottom, which is another thing that we hear all of the time. Issues with wrists that start to preclude people from advancing and really just feeling good. So whenever we're able to straddle the legs and bring that weight more towards the fulcrum, which is the wrist in that situation, then that allows you as a bridge move or a scaffold move to be able to start to unlock the handstand. And this works in every single other aspect of training. All 5 moves that I shared today, and all of those moves being embedded into those 5 elements that help to reinforce each other and help you to move like a pro and be pain-free.